There are three parts to our spinal assessment. There is flexion, which is how much of this position can you get into, or how much rounding can you get into. There is extension, which is how much of an arch can you get across your entirety of your spine. And then there's segmentation, which is how good are you at controlling different areas of your spine at different times, which we look at as a domino effect. For the flexion component, we're breaking this down into a percentage again. And it is simply, can you curve all the different parts of your spine to a point where it gradually all causes a bit of a curve from the bum to the neck. So a really common place where people are let down with the flexion test, so this rounding test, is they try to round their back as much as they can, and you can round your upper back like this, and you get towards the lower back and it's just a bit straighter. And so what it wants to look like is this, so it is completely tucked, your pelvis is tucked, and this bit here is contributing to that curve. You will always have more flexion in your upper back than you will in your lower back, but you want it to be beyond straight. So if this bottom part of your back is straight, then that is reduced from your full 100% score. This is about 100% basically, because it's contributing, in that rule, it's contributing to the full flexion of my spine. So you can see that there's a rounding here, there's a rounding here, there's a rounding here, all the way through to the neck. In extension, we're looking at the same thing. As a simple thing to see, if your lowest part of your back is lower than your pelvis, then you've got full extension of the lower back. And if it looks like this all contributes a bit evenly, then that's great. When you're filming yourself do this, it's easier to see without a t-shirt on, but for dignity purposes, people choose to do it with a t-shirt on, and myself included. In an ideal world, you would see this gradual curve downwards towards the lowest point, and then it would be a smooth change of direction as it comes back up in this direction. It's very common for people to have straight and then one or two vertebrae doing a lot of movement and then straight again. All that means is that one or two of those joints are taking on more load than the ones above it and below it. So you would reduce your percentage score subjectively based on how bad you think it looks. If it is very straight, one or two vertebrae doing the movement and then very straight, be quite harsh with your percentage score. This is subjective, and it is supposed to be subjective because you're going to be looking at this at future dates and seeing whether you can see a difference, and that is based on your perception on how you feel as well. If there is any pain, obviously that contributes to the percentage score. If you have pain in that area or above it and below it, then reduce your score even further. So the second place where people commonly have problems with getting into extension is that their thoracic spine, so the bit where your rib cage is attached to, isn't quite able to get straight. You aren't going to be able to have an opposite curve with your thoracic spine, really. People with low levels of muscle mass and low levels of strength may be able to get their spine to look like it is curved in this upper section here. But for most people, based on the structure of your spine, if you can get this straight, then you have passed 100% of that part of your spine. If in the attempt of trying to get this as arched as possible, this upper part of your back is still curved like this direction a little bit, then that is a reduction in the percentage score. So that contributes to your extension score test. And finally, if this feels very uncomfortable on your neck, so by looking upwards, if this causes a lot of pain in your upper back or in your neck as well, use that to contribute to your score as well. Segmentation should look something like this. If I was going to give myself a score here, I'd be in the 80 to 90% area, because I can cause my pelvis to move first, and then that will cause the lower back joints to start to move, then that will cause the ones slightly further up to start to move, then that'll start to make the next ones further up start to move, and there's this almost domino effect of moving from the pelvis to the lower back to slightly higher up towards the rib cage. And this is where I would score negatively, because you'll see at that point there, my entire thoracic spine starts to arch all in one go. So for me, that is where my area is let down. You can see here, as this bit starts to extend, this bit also starts to extend. I'll do it again, you can see. So it's all good in the lower back, gets to about the rib cage here, and then this is starting to come down as well. This bit's really difficult to segment, and very good people will be able to do that, because at the end of the day, each one of those joints has motor units attached to it that are able to work individually. It just takes a long time to learn how to do that. So I was probably a bit optimistic with my 90%. I'd probably give myself 80% because it's a big area of my spine that's all moving as one unit. However, I may give myself a slightly better score because when I come to doing it from extension into flexion, I am slightly better. So I can allow my head to be the first domino, and it can then come towards here between the shoulder blades, and it's a bit better, but it's still not fantastic. This bit tends to move with my head and with this part of my spine. So I'd give myself about 80% there. So use that information to give yourself 3 separate scores. One for flexion, which as a reminder again is how much of a round you can get. Give yourself a score for extension, which is how much of an arch you can get. And then give yourself a segmentation score, which is how much of your spine can you control individually.